Hi everybody, it's Christina from Pretty Distressed. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be taking this nightstand from Shabby Chic to just chic. I'm going to be giving it a fresh paint job with a smooth, modern finish. I'm also going to be removing a lot of that decorative trim just to make it more modern and sleek, and I'm going to be adding some new feet as well. So if you want to see how I got this clean, modern look, just keep watching. Before I jump into today's project, I wanted to remind you guys that I do have memberships on my channel now. If you enjoy watching the videos on my channel, joining my membership is just a way that you can go above and beyond to help support me and help keep this channel running, and you get added benefits as well. If you want more info on my memberships, just hit that join button, and I also have a link in my description box. And speaking of the description box, that is a great place for you guys to find a lot of additional information about the video that you're watching. I always list the products down there, and I have all my info on how you can follow me on socials and get in contact with me, so don't skip over that. Now that I've got all those announcements out of the way, let's jump in and start this project. So originally I made over this nightstand for a video series I did 4 years ago where I was showing you how to achieve my Goodwill dresser look that I used to have in my foyer. So this piece is still really cute, but it is really, really shabby. It has lots of distressing, lots of dark wax, and it doesn't fit with my daughter's room, and the top is in pretty rough shape too because it's been in there for a while. So I wanted to give it more of a modern finish, a smooth finish, and I wanted to see if I could remove this decorative trim and make the lines cleaner and add some new feet to it. I have seen a lot of my favorite furniture friends that I follow on Instagram do things like this, and I was really inspired by them to try this out on a small piece before I tackle a big piece. So you should give these ladies a follow that inspired this because they are all so talented and create really beautiful furniture. It's Kristen at Shacktoe Interiors, Jen at Perfectly Imperfect Furniture, and Sarah at Sittin' Pretty. I unscrewed as much of the trim as I could, but I realized once I got to this point that I was going to actually have to cut the bottom feet off to get the look that I wanted. So my husband helped me measure and got out the circular saw, but I wanted to do it by myself, so he kind of instructed me through it, and I was super proud that I cut a straight line and I got this thing off. Those back supports were really glued on there, so I couldn't knock those out, so I had to flip it back over and cut that side to get that off. So I flipped this over and cut the other side the exact same way, and then I took my painter's knife and a hammer and just pried off this decorative trim that was at the top. So here's a pile of everything that I stripped off this piece. So now I'm going to prep it to paint it. And since originally this did have wax and dark wax on it, and it was a really textured paint job, I am going to sand as much paint off as I can because I know I'm going for a smooth modern finish. And if you want a smooth finish, the best way to prep your piece is make sure that your piece is smooth before you add any paint. I sanded the majority of this piece with my DeWalt orbital sander with a 150 grit sandpaper, and then did the rest by hand in the hard to reach places. Then I took my wood filler and filled in any holes that I had. You can see I didn't get all that paint off. There still is a little bit of paint on there, but everything is smooth, so that's all you need to do before you paint. I did have to reinforce the bottom a little bit just to make it a little bit more structurally sound and to make the boards wide enough for my new feet that I bought to fit on there. So we just cut some planks down to size, and then I filled them in with a little bit of wood filler so that you wouldn't see the cracks from the front. So once all that wood filler is dry, I'm just going back in and sanding everything down and making sure it is nice and smooth so I have a smooth surface to start painting on. And of course, always remove all that dust before you start painting. I am going to be priming my piece today with Bin Shellac Primer. I'm going to be using a cheap chip brush that I can throw away when I'm done, and I have a smooth foam roller that is meant for doors and cabinetry and trim. And I also lined my paint tray with foil just so I can reuse it over and over again. So the reason I am using this primer is two reasons. Number one, it's going to give me better coverage for when I put my paint on. White has the worst coverage out of any color, and sometimes sometimes you have to do 3, 4, or 5 coats, especially if you don't want to see any of that wood underneath. So adding this primer is going to help me save some paint. And reason number 2 is that this entire piece is not real wood. I realize the sides are MDF or pressed particle board or something and don't have any wood on them, not even a wood veneer. And I just find primer gives you a little bit of insurance there. You can definitely just scuff it up and paint over it, but I like using a primer in these cases. And then those boards I put on the bottom, those also need to be sealed with a shellac non-bleed through primer like this, because you will see that wood grain, you will see those knots if you don't seal this. And especially since I'm using white, those tannins can seep through if you don't seal those boards before you paint them. Once this dries, I come in with a 220 sandpaper and I'm going to sand this entire thing down. This is the key to having a very smooth finish. You want to sand in between each and every coat. I know that's super annoying. I know it's a lot of work, but you're going to be happy with the finish if you sand in between every single coat you're going to put on your piece. I'm going to be using Jolie in Palace White today. This is the second whitest white in their product line. I don't like to use pure whites. That's just a preference. I like to have one that has just a little bit of depth to it, and I really like this one. I've used this cam before, and this can happen if you don't clean up well. You get a little bit of rust, and that stuff can fall in your paint. So I wanted to just be on the safe side and strain this out with some cheesecloth just to make sure I don't have any bits in my paint. I'm going to be applying my paint with my Jolie flat brush today. This is a really great brush for getting that smooth finish. I like to water my paint down a little bit more when I'm going for a smooth finish. So this is probably like an ounce of paint and I did about 20 sprays of water. And I also spray my brush down just to make it damp. Like you don't want it drenched, you just want it a little bit damp to the touch. And when I apply my paint, I go in one direction. I do back brush, but I make sure before I move on to the next section that I do one long sweeping stroke from the top to the bottom just to get out any stop-start marks. I notice when I'm doing a smooth finish like this that it takes me a lot longer to paint. I'm a little bit more intentional about every move I make and how I put my paint on, and I'm really paying attention to if I have drips or globs and smoothing those out. I always do the edges first, as you can see me doing around the top here, and then I will tackle that flat top part. That way I don't get any paint pulling up in those ridges. I let my paint dry for about an hour and then I'm coming back in with that 220 grit sandpaper and I'm gonna sand in between every single coat like I told you guys, and just make sure after you sand that you are removing all that dust with a cloth or a tack cloth before you go on to paint that second coat. The second coat is going on the exact same way the first coat went on, painting around those edges first and then really smoothing out those flat surfaces. And then I'm doing it all again to do a third coat because like I told you, I don't want to see any of that wood coming through. This is going to happen with white. I even primed it. Probably should have done 2 coats of primer and maybe I would have only had to do 2 coats of white paint, but white is just one of those colors that you're going to have to put a lot of coats on if you don't want to see any of that wood. I always let my last coat dry a couple of hours before I top coat. I am going to be using the Dixie Belle Clear Coat in Flat. You have seen it many times, and I'm going to be applying it with the same brush I love to apply it with, the Synthetic Mini, and I like to dampen it just a little bit. Top coating white can be pretty tricky because lint and dust are going to show up more on that color than any other color. So I just always make sure that I dust my piece off really well before I start. I put my clear coat on a paper plate and kind of get the excess off before I start. And that's just going to help keep things from getting in my finish and just keeping it outside of the jar. I find working with just a little small bit on a paper plate is better than dipping into the jar. And I'm just doing this the way I paint it. I'm going around the edges and then I'm going to hit up those flat spots. This, you definitely don't want to overwork or brush back a lot. I do go back and forth because I find I get better coverage that way. And then again, I do that one long stroke when I'm done. If you miss a spot, like you can see I did here, you don't want to go on and put more top coat on here. Just let it dry. You can hit it up on the second coat and you will never notice that there's any holes there. This is water-based and dries pretty quickly, so I am recoating in an hour. But first, what am I doing? I'm sanding with that 220 in between coats. You don't have to do that with this top coat. I prefer to sand in between my top coats because I think it gives you a smoother finish and it gives something for it to stick to. But I know a lot of people who use this top coat that just put top coat on top of top coat and don't sand in between. So I'm gonna leave that up to you. You could certainly use a different top coat here if you wanted something more protective. You could use Dixie Belle Gator Hide. Jolie has a varnish now that I still need to try. You could use wax here. Everybody just knows I'm just a really big fan of this clear coat right now and I can't get off of it for some reason. And especially if it's going in my home, I know this works. I know I like applying it, so that's why I'm using it, but you could definitely use whatever you want. I did 2 coats, but you could do up to 3 if you want. I let this thing dry overnight before I flipped it over, and I put it on a towel to keep it very safe so I didn't scratch up that top while I'm putting my feet on. I got these off of Amazon. I got these for $37.95, which is not the best price. I need to see if I can find these for cheaper, but they were on Amazon and easy to get, and I had no idea what I was going to use them for when I actually got them. They were really easy to line up. I just squared them with the boards so that I didn't really have to measure anything. I put the screws on the outside first, and then this middle screw I had to use a screwdriver to get it in there. And then once I got them kind of all in place where I wanted to, I went back through and tightened them. And they came with the screws and they had enough to put in those 2 other holes, but I found that I didn't need them and this piece doesn't weigh that much, so I just did 3 on each foot. So then I flipped her over and got all the drawers back in, and I did get some new hardware. I just picked it up from Home Depot. They had like a brushed brass modern looking handle that I liked. These are Liberty. I'll link them in the description box. They were $6.70 a piece, and they were the same size as my original hardware, so I didn't have to do any drilling. So to remind you, here is what we started off with, this cute little Shabby Chic nightstand, and here she is all grown up and modern. This is fitting in with the decor in her room so much. I love the way it looks with the bed and the new fan that we put in. This was a lot of work for a little tiny nightstand that is probably not worth all the money and time that I put into it, but I love practicing on things that are small like this, and I think I can incorporate this into bigger dressers and bigger projects in the future, and it was really fun just kind of revisioning this whole piece. Thank you guys for joining me for another project today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, you can give me a thumbs up before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, you can always leave those down below. I read all of them. I know you think that I don't, but I do. I will be back with another project next week. Thanks for being here, you guys, and I will see you next time. Everybody, it's Christina. Welcome back from Pretty Distressed. I don't even know how to do this anymore, guys. Okay.
Yes! I did it! Woo! Oh, this is gonna work, I think!
This is where he wants to sit during my upfronts, so we'll see how quiet he can be. He likes to eat my tape mark.
Hungry, hurry up.
Okay, stop walking and then I'll finish this one. Can you stay there? Can you settle? Murphy, settle. Yes, good boy. Good boy. Send it, Murph. Send it. That was great.